Sultan Qaboos, Qaboos of Oman, he's dead. And the world is a smaller place because of his passing. He was one of the great ones, in my view. We live in a world filled with hubris, filled with selfishness, filled with leaders that are scarcely worth the name leader. But Qaboos was, wow, he was something else. He was really, really remarkable. And he died on Friday. And already by Saturday they'd chosen a successor. They opened the Sultan's letter and appointed Haytham bin Tariq as his successor because that was his choice. And that's fine. But God, the world is a smaller place because of the passing of Qaboos of Oman. He was something. He was a hell of a guy. A really remarkable man. They say governance at its best is a love affair between a leader and his people. Sultan Qaboos never married, or if he did, it wasn't for more than a day or two, and it never quite worked out for him. He was basically a loner in that respect, but he was married to his people, and his people were married to him. He had that basic idea of Pat. He understood what it was to be a ruler, and what it is to be a ruler, a leader, is to love your people. Just that. There's nothing else to it. It's so simple. But most people, most rulers, most leaders don't get it. They think, my people need me, so I will look after them. That's not the same at all. No, Qaboos got it. He actually loved his people. And boy, was he good. This kind of web of life that Charles Darwin used to talk about, interdependence, he meant. Charles Darwin used to think that all life was interdependent. Well, Qaboos of Oman, I guess, got that. He saw that we were all interdependent. We all depended on one another. And he cared, and he cared. That's why he's chosen a successor that's good at economic affairs and foreign policy, because these are key things. He could have chosen a military man as his successor, but he didn't. He chose somebody who really has an understanding of the economic needs of Oman. And Oman is up against the wall economically, because it hasn't got the oil wealth of Saudi Arabia or the United Arab Emirates, and so it does have to struggle in these perilous times. But yes, Qaboos cared, and my goodness, poverty is an issue. So he was caring of his people. He wanted the alleviation of poverty. Manny Shinwell, the great post-war politician, long dead now, I suppose, but he believed the avoidance of chaos and the alleviation of poverty were the great things that mattered in governance. And he was right, of course. Qaboos understood that. He came out of a time when Oman, he took power in 1970, a time when Oman was engaged in a brutal and terrible civil war. The south was influenced by communist Yemen and was rising up after years of bad governance. And Qaboos held out a hand of fellowship and peace, and invited the rebels back to join his government. And it kind of worked. Oman had been riven by civil war for years. Before that, the the Jebel Akhtar were rising up. The people of Nizwa were kind of reactionary in their way as well. Everything, I mean, well, you could regard them as reactionary. They were for the old Imam, restoration of that kind of governance. But Qaboos came into power with, well, I suppose with the British as his kingmaker, and he was always an Anglophile, and he made his nation. He took the wreckage of Oman as it was and made it into a cleansed and invigorated nation. And he cared for everything. I mean, a good bloke in that way. He cared for the environment. I remember he had the most magnificent oryx project down in the Jeddah Harasis, the Jeddah Harasis, an area of rough desert. The oryx, the original unicorn. Of course, they have two horns, but you see one with one horn, you'd think you were seeing a unicorn. And some of the older ones, older males, amazing creatures. Oryx are so beautiful. And they were hunted almost to extinction. The Qataris have a small flock that they used to keep. They do keep. Saudi hunters would come in with machine guns. One killed half the remaining herd from a pickup truck with a machine gun. Unbelievable. I mean, what is that? So, and the oryx were virtually extinct. Qaboos made a big reserve and got the local people to be their protectors. I remember going down. A guy called Roddy used to run the place. Gosh, it was beautiful. Amazing. Not really going so well now. Difficulties in keeping oryx in the wild. But, and stopping people hunting them down. But hopefully Qaboos' legacy will go on in that respect. That's a small thing, but he cared about the environment. He had great environmental laws. Electricity in Oman, they charge you so much for the first 1,000 units, then it doubles for the second 1,000 units, and then doubles for the next 1,000 units. Great way of making it cheap to air condition a hovel and massively expensive to air condition a palace. So, it just, it's a kind of, well, it really is a radically visionary policy. And they're have been adopting it up and down the Gulf now, copying Oman. It's begun in the United Arab Emirates and other places. Jordan, I believe, is adopting that policy. We should adopt it in the West. Why don't we? God knows. Cars in Oman, the cars through the Middle East have a kind of pinger on their speedometer. You reach 120 kilometers an hour and the thing goes ding, 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 ding to remind you you're speeding. But mostly people would disable these. Not in Oman, you have to have it. And indeed, in my day, of course it's years since I lived in Oman, but in my day I remember that government cars used to have a governor on the accelerators. You couldn't actually drive them past 75 miles an hour, 120 kilometers an hour. You couldn't drive them any faster because the fuel would not work. And the oil company, PTO, wasn't it? They decided they wanted to please the Sultan, so they had you put your foot down, and if you went past speed limit, then the fuel would cut out, and it would cut out for half an hour. You'd be stuck at the side of the road. You just lose power. Your car would lose power, and you wouldn't be able to drive it for half an hour. Amazing technology way back then, and Oman had all that sort of thing. Clean. What a clean country. It was amazing. Because the government, because the Sultan believed everything should be clean. Yeah, you could be fined for having a dirty car. My goodness, that was difficult in a country where people were driving in from the interior on muddy days. But you could be fined for having a dirty car. Policemen would go and tell you to wash your car, and you'd fail to obey at your peril. No, it is a very clean country. Great fireworks on National Day. God, Sultan loved fireworks. Best fireworks in the world in the Sultanate of Oman. And tea parties down on his birthday. He used to host tea parties in the palace. Boy, it was a great thrill to get an invite for you and your wife and kids to go to the Sultan's tea party. My. Cakes were amazing things to behold. And the sandwiches so delicious. Gosh. And the tea was good and strong. Yes, but there you go. I mean, but what made him great? Meet the People tours was one of his things that made him great. He would... once a year for a month, he'd go wandering off through his country, touring place to place, meeting his people. And the ministers would be dragged up and dragged along with him. They'd actually become his bodyguard. He'd make them carry machine guns and walk behind him. And they would be hauled up to answer questions from... tribes in Majlis after Majlis as the carpets were laid out, and the Sultan would camp, and the people would meet and discuss things. It used to be like that throughout the Middle East, Used to be like, it's like the United Arab Emirates. You could meet Sheikh Zayed, people, but those days are long gone, except in Oman. In Oman, the Sultan did that. Just in Oman, where it had gone everywhere else. He would meet his people. I remember, it's odd, isn't it? I first went to Oman in 1970, before the coup that brought the young Sultan to power. And in those days, under the Sultan's father, I remember being astonished. You could see outside Muscat, outside the city gates, there were people coming in the morning, businessmen and so on. And they would have an umbrella in one hand, like a British umbrella, but over their back would be slung a machine gun. And I remember passing a chain gang. A chain gang with ball and chain, a chain gang labouring at the roadside. And the women wore bright dresses, and the city gates were locked at night. But all that's changed, of course, all for the good. Except for the bright dresses of the women. I'm sorry to see those gone now. Women have adopted the dress of the interior, the Bedou, and all wear black cloaks like black bats. Well, by and large, anyway. Or at least they did in my day. But not in the very early days. They used to wear such bright dresses. Anyway. But what about the Sultans? He had a balanced foreign policy, built not on hubris, not on pride, but on tolerance and reaching out to everybody. I mean, Netanyahu of Israel visited Oman. Oman was befriended Iran in a place in a time where divisions in the Middle East are harsh. Oman really was and is an example of peace building. I mean, the role it's had in Yemen. I do hope the Hadramaut and that area of Yemen close to Oman remains close to Oman because Yemen is so war torn and they need some care, and only Oman can give it in that region. Oman, it's natural for Oman to do that, and God knows Yemen needs some stability. Why? I mean, what makes Oman so good? What makes Oman so? I mean, perhaps partly it's religion. They're Ibadi Muslim. What is Ibadi is basically based on a work ethic, on don't waste anything. I mean, an Ibadi sheikh will eat every last grain of rice on his plate, every last grain, rather than waste. Quite different from the normal custom in the Arab world, which is to keep on eating until you can eat no more and leave lashes of food in some display of extravagance. Ibadis are much more Puritan, and the work ethic is very strong, just like the Puritans in the West. And religion is stripped down and simple. The Sultan has built a great new fancy mosque, which is way, way away from the Ibadi tradition. Ibadi mosques didn't have great minarets and twirly bits and so on. They were simple, stripped down things. Indeed, often without a minaret at all. They were very basic. Now, of course, they're much more fanciful, I suppose. That's gone. But the basic tradition of Ibadi Islam, which is one of simple purity, is still there in Oman. So the Sultan's dead. Long live the Sultan. We've now got Haytham bin Tariq. Will he go on Meet the People tours? I hope so. Sultan Qaboos used to make his ministers run up and down sand dunes and have shooting competitions. I'm not sure Haytham bin Tariq will do the same. Shame if he doesn't. But by all accounts, he's a good man. The Sultan's dead. Long live the Sultan. I wonder sometimes about my old friends from Oman. Ali Nasser al-Hadrami, Sharifa, Jamal, Miriam, how they are now. Probably old like me now. We all get older. And Oman is changing. I haven't seen Said Fahad, who was my late father's friend for decades. But I haven't been back to Oman for a long time, but it is one of the most beautiful countries in the world. God bless Oman. God bless the new Sultan. God bless that country. And God rest the soul of Sultan Qaboos al-Said. He was special. He is special. His legacy is his nation. And his nation is special. God bless Oman.